and it's demonetization. But, they still won't let us take a time over here. That's part of it. And anybody who can think for themselves, ladies and gentlemen, is not allowed to make money out there because we might encourage free thinking and doing your own research out there. Everybody, welcome to the show. I am your host, Craig Pasta-Jardula, and this is the TruthWire. Shortly, Fiorella Isabel will be along when she finishes up an interview and she jumps on. I got to tell you, today's guest, we have two guests. Of course, we're doing this Friday thing. It will be the second time he's on. Edwin Dejesus will join us at 2 o'clock from New York. If you don't know who Edwin Dejesus is, he was one of the campaign managers for Cornel West, but more importantly that he was a leftist like myself in the medical freedom movement that got beat up and beat down for pushing back against the COVID protocols, for pushing back against Big Pharma. We couldn't understand it. We would talk about it quite so much. Our number one enemy for so long in the Bernie Sanders diner in the movement was the pharmaceutical lobby, was Big Pharma, because we wanted Medicare for all, and they were the thing that was stopping us. However, during a crisis of sorts, I guess all those lefties, American lefties, not a lefty like me, that's for sure. They're not anti-imperialist like me. But they thought it was that the health companies would capitulate back to being good, and they totally bent the knee to them, took the shot, listened, did it no matter what, didn't do their own research. It was quite crazy. But he is one of those, and he's giving us some updates on Zorhan Mandami, where he stands on the vaccine, on protocols, just in case of the next pandemic, which they talk about. He'll be on at 2 o'clock today. That's Edwin Dejesus. He's been rocking with us on Fridays. Got a lot of good information. But our first guest, I am beyond excited. I don't think I've been this excited for a guest in quite some time because you've seen her out there, ladies and gentlemen. She's a farmer, a teacher, a retired Air Force officer, and a contributor to, I think it's LewRockwell.com, L-E-W Rockwell.com, where she writes quite a bit of articles. She churns them out. You've probably seen her on Judge Knapp. That's where I've seen her. She's one of my favorite, what I like to call the generals, even though she's a colonel. Ladies and gentlemen, Karen Kwiatkowski is with us. Colonel, how are you today?
I'm fine.
Well, look, I know you've gotten a lot of great introductions out there. I wanted to make sure that this one had more energy than any introduction.
That was an excellent. That was wonderful. I'm majorly flattered.
No, listen, you've been one of my favorites. I got to say that, I always create lists. And during COVID, I created a bunch of lists. And at the top of my list was Peter McCullough and tied with Zelenko. And Peter McCullough contacted me, and I've done about 12 interviews with him since I reached out to him on multiple shows. And it's amazing. On my list for the Judge Knapp generals, I like to call them, even though you're a colonel, at the top of the list, I put you and Colonel Wilkerson. I don't know, but for me, there's something so human about you guys, like the everyday person, the way you write, the way you talk. And I wanted to just have you on and have an amazing interview with some interesting questions today that you probably wouldn't get it on a lot of other channels. Okay. So let's dive right into it. Thank you again for doing the show. This is going to be a lot of fun. But here's my first question to you, Colonel, because I think we're starting getting into that position. And obviously we see your stance on Judge Knapp. We were on Crosstalk together. And it's like, I'm always like hoping, like on Crosstalk lately, give me a Trumper. Give me somebody I can go. I want to eat. I want to go after somebody. Give me a Trumper. But I got you and Patrick Henningsen. And the problem with you and Patrick Henningsen is that you guys call balls and strikes, and I couldn't go after you. Karen, whose team are you on? And why is that important to the citizenry of the United States?
Oh, my gosh. Well, there's a uniparty that we have, and I'm not on the uniparty's team. So I don't know what team that makes me. I'm probably on the anti-state team because I have and this may be where I diverge from, what American lefties or whatever in some ways, but I don't have a great deal of faith in the construct of the state. And, we're always disappointed by it. We say, well, why doesn't the state behave better? Why doesn't it do better? Why don't politicians do what they say? Why are we the people really, we the farm animals, and rather than actual people that control our own destiny and that control and influence our government? And we know that we don't influence our government. That's pretty clear. And there's actually been a lot of studies to show that. But back in 2014, there was a very interesting academic study. 2 professors put it together, and they looked to see how the United States was governed. What was it most like? And what it was most like is what we already know. It was most like a kind of a business kleptocracy. I mean, it wasn't the republic that we think of on paper. It wasn't a democracy, because the people that vote have so little influence. And they said basically influence comes from money and connections, and money and connections build a kind of community that is very non-representative. And they get the government that they like, apparently. The rest of us don't get it. So, I do vote periodically, and I liked what Trump had to say about, which turns out not to be true, but about peace, making peace. And I like what he said about putting America first, because I interpreted that meaning ending the empire, which is going to end anyway, but it would be nice and smart for America to end the empire in a more measured and calculated way, because it's going to end. And if it ends in a radical way, it could end in World War III. That's how many, empires do end that way. But that's what I thought Trump was talking about. But little by little, and not really little by little, suddenly, amazingly, you can see that Trump does not care about that. He actually loves the state, and he loves the trappings of power. He loves the exercise of power to the extent that the deep state around him allows him to do what he might personally want to do. So he's not up to it. And he certainly, for all this talk of his desire for a Nobel Peace Prize, that's what he wants, the prize. He doesn't want the peace. But anyway, that's kind of, I really don't like any of the parties.
Well, I mean, you have supported Trump before in the past. I don't want to say support.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
you hoped, right? You hoped that he would be different.
Yeah. And also, and this is kind of what he has done. I saw him as a disruptor. And my view of the state is that it needs to be taken down. And I like disruptors. And I think his team of people that he had, especially the second time, because he really was a disappointment the first time. But the second, this current election last year, he brought on RFK Jr. He had Tulsi Gabbard, although she's kind of been, downshifted in power or in influence. But, he had people from left, right, and center. And almost all of them agreed that we had big problems in D.C. and they needed to kind of address them. So I liked that he had put this team together, but it seems like it was nothing but a bait and switch. I think RFK is succeeding to some extent. Tulsi Gabbard, I think, just recently announced, she's refocusing the intelligence community. Well, it's talk. Talk is, I'd like to see it, but I'm not hopeful.
Yeah. Well, the thing that scares me about those two that you mentioned is that they're just so loyal to Israel. That
oh my God, yes,
I mean,
yes.
That
is a side thing that I actually, honestly, did not realize until after the election was over with. I did not realize how much Tulsi was a Zionist, and I didn't realize how much RFK Jr. was either a Zionist or just somebody who
has been compromised. It was on that jet.
That's right.
Had a sex addiction. What do they got on him? I can only imagine the videos they have on RFK.
A lot of things. Yeah.
So here's the thing. And by the way, Fiorella, welcome to the show. Just got done with an interview. She's on over. I was told it's Lieutenant Colonel Karen Kwiatkowski. How do I say your last name right? Do I say it?
We just say Kwiatkowski.
So you don't say Kwiatkowski?
No. I mean, I answer to it,
right? All right, I'll get it right moving forward. The W is solid. Kwiatkowski. Lieutenant Colonel, you just did mention about the fact that, we had hoped that Donald Trump would have been the real disruptor that we wanted, not the fake disruptor. Yeah. I don't think I did. His administration was saying out of the gate they would be the most Zionist administration of all times. And boy, are they proving that to be true.
Yeah, they sure are. Yeah.
You were just at the Ron Paul event. You go to that event. I have I consider myself a leftist libertarian. I voted for Chase Oliver because I believe they had a fair system, even though he had some things I didn't like. At least he wasn't a Zionist. And it was crazy how the party kicked themselves in the ass by supporting Donald Trump instead of their own candidate who won fair and
Yeah.
square and campaigned in 50 states. So right now, as old school Democrats, me and Fiorella, we're witnessing the same moves we saw back in the days. The vote for blue no matter who. Here comes Gavin Newsom with the nice hair. He's looking good. But there's some of us who won't fall for it. And we're also, I would say, I don't think Fiorella is as patient as I am for some of the Trump people, because we had Obama and we got beat by Obama, right? Like, we knew in the first week when he came out and he said, this is who I can pick for my economic team. And it was a list written by Citibank. We that we were duped, but we still went along with it. We still played the lesser of two evils games. Now you have the anti-woke populist right that's still playing the lesser of two evils game. And it looks like they'll be duped in voting for J.D. Vance, who's Palantir's little boy, Peter Thiel's little boy. What do you say to those people out there? Fiorella exists outside the voting thing. I vote. I believe in voting. I believe it's my right to vote, even though I understand the system to be fraudulent. What suggestions do you have? Or what thoughts do you have what people should do moving forward now that we've been duped by Donald Trump? And if the last one didn't get him, Karen, where he let a pedophile get back to Israel.
Oh my gosh.
If that didn't get them, nothing will. Your thoughts?
No. Well, the largest voting group in this country, it's slightly over a third generally, is the non-voter. Okay. It's the person who doesn't participate. So there is a lot to be said for the power of not consenting to any of these guys. That is a powerful thing, but it's hard to quantify that. But the fact is, those parties, the two main parties, basically, they do chase votes. They need numbers. They don't really care that they're lying to us. They don't care that we're frustrated after we vote. They don't care about the falseness of their arguments, their mutual Zionism. They don't care about any of those things. That's what they are. That's who they are. They embrace that. But they need our numbers. They need people to show up. They need states to go 51% or 50 plus 1%, 50 plus 1 on their party. They need that, because if they don't have that party support, then they really can't. They do have to look inward. They do have to be afraid. So, and they're already afraid. This is why we teach our little children in the public schools and private schools too. Oh, you must vote. You must vote. Voting's the most important thing. No, it's not the most important thing. It's the least important thing. Action is the most important thing. Civil disobedience is the most important thing. You know, speaking out, understanding issues and talking about them with everybody you know, that's the most important thing, not voting. But they yell at us all the time about it, which tells me that they know it's a key domestic vulnerability. If we stop voting for them, and think about the way totalitarian governments in the past, or let's say Russia or Iraq under Saddam Hussein and many other countries, they mandate voting, and very often you only have one choice or two identical choices. And what does that get you when you mandate? You're just saying, we know that you don't like us, but we're going to force you to act like you do so that we can have this kind of legitimacy that we're with the numbers. So I think both parties are illegitimate. And actually, since we brought up the influence of AIPAC, basically the Zionist faith of both parties, it's becoming very obvious to the American people who really owns and who owns Congress. Not just Congress, many state houses are owned by the Zionists, and of course the White House. So we are in a good place in some ways to really take power away from these parties. But the problem is, our system is so sclerotic. It is a broken system. So I'm of the mind, now again, this is my kind of anarchist libertarianism, I'm of the mind to get as far away from it as possible and let it collapse, because there's no way. Let's say we had a new party, like, remember Musk wanted to do a party for about a week or half a week. He wanted to do a party. Now we'll do an American party. It's going to be a true America First party. Well, he's backed off of that. But any winning party in the United States empire right now, headed out of Washington, D.C., is going to inherit something that cannot be fixed. It cannot be fixed. And I have come to that conclusion that it cannot be fixed. It has to fail. When I was younger, much, much younger, I thought you could fix it. And I think that's the story that both parties tell their voters. We can fix it. We can tweak it here. We can reform this, but you can't. There's too much criminality institutionalized, and there's too much debt, which somebody wants paid back. Now, obviously, many people who have invested in the U.S., that would be the American people. We're not going to get it back. We're going to get the shaft. But certain banks, maybe some foreign countries, the people that control power in this country, that hold the reins, they want their investment back, and they're going to take it. I don't know if you've seen The Great Taking, the video, or read the long essay called The Great Taking.
No, I have not.
I'll send you the link. Anyway, this guy worked in Wall Street. He's a career guy, but he explains how the laws have changed in terms of basically almost like bankruptcy, like civil bankruptcy, how it works. And he says, when the government goes bankrupt, we think, oh, well, they'll be the last ones paid. And he explains how they will be the first ones paid. And it won't be the government that gets paid. It'll be the government influencers, so to speak. It'll be those who hold the reins of power. They'll get paid first. And that is legal. They have done this legally in the past 20 to 25 years. So he explains all this, and it sounds kind of like financial geeky kind of thing, but you can understand it. It's very short. There's also a video that makes it even easier called thegreattaking.com. That's the website.
Are you saying that by the time they take their lunch, when it gets to us, there'll be no roast beef left?
No, there won't be any roast beef left. No, there won't be anything left. And so if you believe that, or think that that's a possibility, which I certainly do, and many people do, then what you have to do is you have to prepare that next phase. So how are we going to survive that? Well, we need to build our networks. We need to figure out where we're going to get food and grow food. And we need to not be so obsessed with running the world. Of course, we have to be anti-imperialist. That goes without saying. That's not our business. It's not profitable. But also, we have to think about how we want to be run. And I would like to think that there's enough people in this country that, whether they were brought up or they discovered it, that believe in individual freedom, that really embrace what the Libertarian Party has in its platform. Now, some of the stuff in the platform is in the weeds, and that's fine for a party. But in general, there's some simple rights that we have, and they're God-given. They're not granted by governments. And if we think those rights are important, then we'll persist in the post-U.S. government. And it may not even be a U.S. government. I'm a big fan of decentralization. You know, the 5th largest economy in the world is run by Mr. Newsom right now.
Yeah.
Okay, that's nuts. They don't even need to be a part of the United States. They could run a very effective and wonderful independent Republic of California very easily. But why can't we let that happen? Oh, because the federal government has military bases there, and the military bases from California, control the Pacific.
Yeah. Well, the argument is that the federal government is the one who obtained Mexico back in the days. That's why they have a right to keep it. That's the argument. Yeah.
You know what? They also promised to preserve our liberties and respect them. They don't do that either. So, I'm not big on any promise that government says that we promise to them. You throw it right back in their face, because the government hasn't kept its promises to the American people. And also, most Americans have no interest in empire. They have no interest in controlling the world. They have no interest in fighting other people's wars, and that includes Israel's wars. We don't care about that. That's not our business. And that's the way the majority of the people feel. What does our government do? Not that.
The opposite.
Yep.
You're unmuted, fam.
One second. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, Lieutenant Colonel, very nice to be here with you. When I hear you speak, I don't hear a typical military person that is the stereotype speak. Because I have a few uncles that are in the military, and they've actually gone from being Trump supporters to questioning Trump and really stopping their support of him. So I think a lot of the things that we're talking about here are not just in our limited scope of politics or geopolitics or political discussions, but rather they're actually real questions that everyday American people are grappling with that I don't think they were grappling with before. When I was just in the United States, because I'm also in Moscow and I go back and forth, I noticed that there is a very predominant sentiment that is uniting people in terms of this antagonistic and well understood disdain for Israel, and asking the questions as to, for example, why there is this loyalty to Israel when constantly you hear people like Donald Trump talk about America first, when you hear people, especially on the conservative end, talk about focusing on the American public, the American people that are undergoing a lot of stresses, that are seeing their rights diminished time and time again, on top of the economic downturn that we have seen, the decline in lifestyle. Simultaneously, you see Israel is specifically people who consider themselves Zionists be given this mantle of excuses for behaving the way they do and for living a lifestyle that exceeds the lifestyle of the average American person. And my generation, the millennial generation, and the generation younger than that, the Gen Z, we have just seen war after war after war, and we're not having normal kids. We're not, we're not really, I would say we're not very optimistic about the future for obvious reasons. And this general block of people that isn't voting, that's a lot of the youth. And these reasons are particularly because they're also not doing anything to secure the government as a whole, to make us feel like we have some sort of reliance on the future, that the future holds anything of value. Yet we grew up being told that the American dream is true and that we could accomplish anything if we just work hard, and that we were the center of the world and all of this and that. But as someone that's traveled abroad all over the Middle East, all over Latin America, and in Russia, and has seen what's happened, our HIMARS has seen the devastation that our weapons have caused all over the world. It really does do something to your psyche as to understanding how our domestic policy is absolutely 100% influenced by our foreign policy.
Yes.
And how more and more people today are clearly realizing this. And is there something to say about, when you talk about decentralization, I'm all for that. When you talk about, being an anti-imperialist, I'm all for that. I actually come from a very, very leftist paradigm, but I'm at the moment right now in the US having conversations with everybody, whether they consider themselves Republican, Democrat, or ultra leftist, socialist, whatever it is. And we're all coming to the same conclusion that the situation in the United States is there is no electoral policy. There's no election that is going to get us out of this. We're not going to get out of this through voting. We're not going to get out of this through someone saving us. We have to save ourselves. The problem is we constantly rely on a sort of superhero, Superman coming to save us, whether it's Elon Musk, whether it was Donald Trump, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Bernie Sanders on the other side. Yeah. And so I think my question to you is, how do we get out of that cycle that we're like focused on elections and focused on maybe voting? If you understand that that's not going to do anything for us, then how do we pivot to organizing? Essentially is what we need to do, and getting ahead of the game in order for when it does fall, because I'm with you, we are falling right now. We are an empire in decline. Yeah. When it falls, there'll be chaos. So how do we manipulate the situation in a very proactive manner to get ahead of that, as once it falls, we have a plan in place?
Yeah, that is a huge, you've got some of the answers in the question, but that's a huge challenge. And it's a big problem for multiple generations to figure out this. So first off, there's no need to vote. Voting is a game. Local voting is another thing. If you live in a town and you want to be, we have a local town here. Nobody runs for the town council. So anybody who stands for it pretty much gets on. That's fine. that's fine. You know, if you there was an 18-year-old high school kid that got elected with 82 votes at one point. I mean, that is democracy. That guy knows every one of his voters personally, and he doesn't have a big budget, and he doesn't have a military, so it's a safe vote. But at the federal level, I think the first thing is to recognize that, especially for the younger generations who are dealing with it in their day-to-day life, and they're saying, oh, I'm not where I should be. I should have done more by now or had more, and I don't, and it's a struggle. Recognize that that is a symptom, very real symptom of an empire that is dying. And it's also a sign of a money system that's dying, and empires and their money systems die together because empires destroy their money by inflating the value away because they borrow, because you have to borrow to conduct wars. Wars are not popular, so you can't really tax the people up front. And this has been the story of American life really for quite some time, but certainly since the beginning of the Federal Reserve. So because that's the government's bank that produces the money that the government can spend on all this stuff that destroys the planet and destroys the environment too. This is another thing I don't get. The biggest destructor and polluter on the planet is the military, and particularly the United States military, but also the wars that we cause, because we're always fighting somebody. So there's just a terrible amount of destruction. Anyway, so recognizing the empire is dying, and it's not dying like, oh, I'm sick, I'm on the couch, but in a few days I'll get better. I have the flu, I'm going to recover. No, it's not that kind of dying. It is stage 4 cancer. Okay, it is massive cardiac arrest, and you're on a machine. This empire is really on a machine, and we can pull the plug at any time. That the power can go out; they're going to be gone. So we have to recognize that's hard to think about because we love our country. We're taught to be patriotic and all these symbols of American power, so wonderful. But the reality is that they are. It's an illusion. It has been for some time. So I think. Waking up to that it's going to end. It's ending right now. And will there be chaos? Well, actually, there's chaos right now. Part of that chaos is the fact that our money, all of our assets are overvalued and our money is undervalued. So we have our economic health in real terms is very, very bad. So, and we're not nurses. And even if we were nurses and doctors, we cannot save the empire. So wake up to that. It's going down. Now, how do you survive? Well, you take stock of what you have. I think for a lot of, and this is maybe a little off topic, but not really, the boomers, because I'm a boomer. I'm like at the end of the youngest boomers, Okay.
I get made fun of for being a boomer, even though I'm Generation X by my business partner over here. She always calls me a boomer, and I'm not.
Yeah, well, I'm technically a boomer, and I definitely, there's no doubt that my generation and the boomers in front of me benefited from all this inflated government printing. Okay, asset valuations have gone up through the roof, not for any reason. A rickety old house that was rickety in 1950 is worse shape now, but it's 3 or 4 or 5 times the value. So, and it's unaffordable. And if you bought it, you'd have to put even more money into it. None of this is good stuff. That's going to get corrected when that is in the process of being corrected. So. But what do the young generations have? Well, they do have grandparents and parents. Okay, so I wouldn't alienate those folks. They also have an attitude that's anti-imperial. That's wonderful because we don't have to fix that. Many baby boomers and Zionists for sure. The Zionism itself is an imperial philosophy, but the pro-Zionist Americans, whether it's evangelical Christians or just political people or the whole bunch in government that are blackmailed or financial beneficiaries of Zionism, those guys are imperial and they love it. They think the empire is natural. They think it's normal. They don't think it's dying. They think it's actually getting better. This is Trump. Trump is an imperialist, and he believes that he's going to make the empire even stronger. He believes that you can't fix that. Okay. And a lot of boomers are stuck in that mind thing, and they're going to pass on. Yeah. But the young people aren't stuck in that. So I think we need to celebrate not America first, because Trump kind of hijacked that term. He made it sound like it was going to be good. Then turned out he didn't mean that. He didn't mean that at all. He was an imperialist, just like everybody else, a Zionist, just like all the rest of them. So it's not about America first, but it is about Americans first. And I think that is something we should be able to get behind. So there's that. The other thing that, and when I say take stock, you take stock of your family resources. And even if that's overvalued assets, Take stock of that, because grandchildren are going to inherit whatever's left from their parents. And what's fundamental about that? Well, land, gold, and skill sets, whatever they can learn from them. That's what can't be taken away. That can't be, if you have that, you're in good shape. If the empire is dying, you don't want to support empire in any way, shape, or form. If the state is an imperial state, we do not support the state. And I think increasingly people are not going to be paying the taxes that the baby boomers have paid and accepted, and we celebrate it. This is fine. We're making lots of money. We don't mind paying taxes. The taxes that all of us pay who work for pay, and they're taken out, we don't even see our paycheck. It pays for the empire. It pays to kill Gazan babies. It pays to starve the Palestinians until they die. That's what it pays for. It pays for a massive military, and the American military is a whole other area that we can critique. But what we have produced, what our system of the military industrial complex, our system of producing weapons, what it has given us is nothing that we can use to defend this country. Okay. You take a B-2 bomber and let's throw some bunker busters on it. Trump did that just a while ago. B-2 bomber, $1 billion. Bunker busters, 2 or 3 of those, $500 million. And what does it do? It does one job, and then it goes away, and it probably has to be repaired afterwards. F-35, same thing. Our boats, our carrier battle groups that we have, I think there's 12 or 13 now. These are very old, many of them, but even the new ones don't work right. And what are they? What do they actually serve in terms of defense? Nothing. They are sitting ducks. They are targets. And how many different countries have the capability at far less dollars to totally remove an aircraft carrier? I mean, sink it right down to the bottom, just like that. How many countries? Not just Russia, not just China, not just India, not just Pakistan. Australia could do it. If the Australians decided we're against the Americans because they're raping us financially and maybe perhaps in other ways, Australians can do it. Anybody with a submarine can do it. So all of that investment, and it's a lot, and it's sad to see the waste. It is frustrating to see the waste, but it didn't produce that much. So when the empire falls, these things will fall, but they're kind of like when you pop a balloon. The balloon looked really big, but when you pop it, you just got a few pieces of rubber on the floor. That's all that's going to be left. It is not something worth saving. So if we can recognize that, and then we say, okay, well, if that's not worth saving, what can I build? Yeah. What can I do? How can I control my environment, my life? How can I influence people to think more similarly to me so that then we can rebuild? And it's not just rebuilding, it's building right now. And I think that's the key to it. And so we have to, the first thing and the last thing that you do is realize the empire's dying. And it's not just dying like, oh, it's having a bad day. It's going down, and it's not going to come up again. And everything that it holds dear, its military industrial complex and all of the corruption of the state, all the backs, the paybacks and the briberies and all of these things that makes the world go round in Washington, it's worth nothing. It is worthless. It looks like it's worth something. It's worthless. And we're not going to use that. Your generations aren't going to use that to govern. So what are you going to use to govern? Well, that's up to you guys. But you need to recognize that the boomers aren't leaving you a good system. The boomers are probably going to skate out of here, go to heaven or hell, and it's going to collapse right after that. I mean, we're within a very short amount of time. So, and that time will go by fast. And you want to have kids, and you want to have a place to live, and you want to enjoy life, and you want to travel, and you want to do all the things that we should be able to do as free people. Yeah. In a potentially prosperous nation, we should be able to do all these things. So I would say, recognize that there's nothing to save. Don't bother saving it. And that includes voting. And go start doing what you want to do and exercise your freedom. I think many times we're frustrated. We say, well, if we could just get control of the reins. You don't want reins of this horse on its last leg, literally. You do not want to ride this horse. You want to get a new mode of transportation.
Yeah. I don't know. There's one thing when you think about World War II brought us out of the Great Depression. It makes me think, what is the United States and the empire going to do again? Try to go to war, try to steal resources? Because a great way to to not have to rely on quantitative easing, which is what saved the dollar a lot of times, right? They've done this
in the past, yeah.
In the past, right? So a way to save it is also just go to war, steal some resources, take some land. And I'm really nervous about that. But let me just finish my question. I'll let you dive right in, because what's stopping the whole system in the empire from falling is people still hanging on.
Yes.
When it came to Obama, a lot of us who were behind him hope and change. The change was we're going to have an anti-Wall Street president. We knew right away he was an anti-Wall Street. We're going to have an anti-war president. Well, hold my beer. Syria, Libya, Honduras. I mean, the list goes on and on. The same policies in Venezuela that have been continued on for quite some time. War at the South, war in the Middle East. He was just a continuation. So we knew when it came to the Trumpers, a lot of us thought, and I had hoped, well, at least he'd be more for civil liberties. At least he'd be more against censorship.
Yeah.
We know right now he's censoring us on the behest of Israel. When are the Trumpers going to wake up to his lies?
Well, a lot of them have in some ways. If you think about who the Trumpers are, you've got your old time Republicans. They love the Zionism. They love Trump. They love that Trump got votes because they're part of the Uniparty. But a lot of Trump's voters were the libertarian minded people. It was a lot of non-voters who got excited about maybe his attitude, his charisma, his kind of, I don't know if charisma is the right word, but, his energy, I think was powerful. And he did present himself as a disruptor, which is good. And a lot of people see value in that because, the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over. We've been doing that
different results,
for many decades. So I think those guys who were last to join the Trump train, except for the establishment Republicans, they didn't like Trump. But once they realized Trump was actually one of them, but he looked good to all the other voters, all the other, Republican, independent, whatever, they accepted him well. But I think the ones who became excited about the possibility to save the state, which is to save the empire, but it wasn't advertised that way, they thought, oh, well, this guy can do it. But now they realize he can't. And also, the world is different than it has been in the sense that we have an ability to almost emotionally judge the state that we used to not have. It used to always be done through political lenses, but now in terms of Zionism, I think a lot of people, they don't really know what Zionism is. I mean, Zionism, a philosophy, the history of Israel, they don't know that. And we're not taught it. But what they do know is there's a country using American bombs. Our country's broke. We're draining our military inventory. We're giving it to a country that is murdering people and has turned what was a pretty nice, Middle Eastern set of cities into nothing but rubble. And they're lying about it on top, which we're very sensitive to. I think we can figure out the lies much more quickly than we used to be. So that's almost not a political reaction, but an emotional one. And you can't control that. And it's also, obviously, they want to control TikTok, which, I mean, didn't they just hire an IDF guy to run the TikTok's quality control or whatever?
Yeah.
And then, of course, they had Facebook and X and Twitter. Well, they had Twitter for sure. They've got X also, in some ways different than the way they controlled Twitter, but it's the same functionality is there. So they don't want us to. But I think that genie's out of the bottle. So technology-wise, the younger generations in particular, but also everybody, we're so dependent on access to information that we must have it. And I think the empire is a little bit afraid if they limit it too much, they will get the revolt that they fear. But, when I'll tell you, you've listened to Colonel McGregor on Judge Knapp, right?
Yep.
He talks about, and he gave us a talk the other day at the Ron Paul Institute thing about including the word revolution. And I've heard him talk about it before, the idea of revolution. And I don't see that happening. I don't see an organized, any type of armed revolution. When empires die, when the Roman Empire finished off, they had conquered a lot of people, and different ethnicities, different nation states had come subordinate to the Roman Empire. But when it started to fail, was they were chipping their money and it wasn't worth anything. It was constantly about war. It was kind of like Ukraine, where they're dragging people off the street to fight. People then turned away. They turned their backs on the empire. They said, are you a Roman citizen? Well, at the peak of empire, yeah, I'm a Roman citizen, proud to say so. But now a later, they don't. They say, no, I'm this, I'm that, I'm Germanic, I'm with this tribe, I'm whatever. And, we've seen this for years where Americans go overseas. Somebody says who you are, and we say we're Canadian. Because, we don't need to deal with the fact that our empire is destroying the planet, and we don't want to be touched by that. So, again, this has been a long time coming.
Yeah.
My question is, so we are seeing the Donald Trump administration really follow in line with a lot of the things Joe Biden had established during the time of, say, January 6th and onward, where you were labeled a domestic terror threat if you questioned the elections, where you were labeled some sort of domestic terrorist for anything that was deemed radical. Not only has he given the identity, the data of the majority of Americans into Palantir and into these very nefarious Silicon Valley tech companies, not only has that power been centralized during his administration, they're also working with Israeli tech, Israeli intelligence, and spyware that is being used to target the immigrants or the undocumented immigrants that have been coming in. Now, we have seen zero guarantee that any of this technology isn't going to be used for citizens. The technology isn't going to say, oh, you're an American citizen and you're an undocumented immigrant or an undocumented migrant. We're not going to use this technology on you. It's not, that's not how things work. Once things are implemented, right? Once we had our rights trampled by the Patriot Act, we never got them back. We don't get things back once they go through. So what I'm seeing now is Trump really, really go crazy when it comes to this stuff with the bringing the National Guard to DC. Now that I have seen and heard the word fascist being used by a lot of people. And it's not just the people who don't like him, who never liked him, like the Democrats, but it's also the people who believed in him. Because one of the things that we have prided ourselves in the United States, one of the only things we can say that actually is to some degree lended truth, at least for a while, was freedom of speech and the ability to criticize, the ability to say, allow Nazis to march down, a road, and the ability for people of all beliefs to say something and do something. And that seems to be going away pretty much entirely. And when you have this push to basically create a police state that is surveilling people under the guise of safety, it kind of goes back to the COVID era. It goes back to pretty much any era where we have been policed and our rights have been diminished for the excuse of safety. And we know where this is going. My question to you is, we see what's happening in Gaza and Palestine. We see this technocratic takeover there. We are actually seeing that all over the world because China and Russia are also competing with the US in an effort to not be left behind with the AI.
Yeah.
Are we fighting now a sort of global war against the powerful elite, I would say, that are actually using this technology? It could very well even use this technology further to crush dissent, and essentially we would just live in a totalitarian state. But it wouldn't just necessarily be us. It could be multiple nation states all over the world.
Yeah, no, it is a global thing for the people, regular people who just want to live. And this it's not a one state, but this global ruling class, which is harnessing all this technology. Back in the early, I don't know, not too long ago, but it's been a while, when they started the Real ID program. Remember the Real ID? And many states, so my state has mandated it. A lot of states have mandated it now. You have to have a Real ID enabled driver's license, all these things. But when it first started, one of the discussions, they said, oh, Real ID, that's just to make sure we don't have illegal immigrants working in our packing plants. But really, Ron Paul noted this, and a few others did, that this technology will be used to control Americans. The thing about a Real ID is it's an ID card with a chip in it, and there's plenty of space to put stuff in the future. It's built for that kind of growth. It's built for totalitarian control, and that's just one older type, of technology, RFID type stuff. So with AI and with Palantir and the way they target and the way they gather and scoop up every single bit of data about everybody and integrate it together instantly. This is something that all the states are using against their people. And Trump also, you said fascist. Okay, that's certainly, trying to control everything, over centralize. And certainly he's doing that. He wants to buy 10% of Intel. He wants the U.S. taxpayer, the government, because it's not the taxpayer, because we don't get a vote and we're not going to be shareholders. He wants the federal government to buy 10% of Intel.
Communism!
Yeah, I mean, come on. Maybe, is that what he is? I don't even think communists would do that. So he is very much the icon of what's bad in terms of a philosophy that will destroy freedom, freedom of speech. I was shocked, and I don't know why I was shocked, but I was, that students at colleges who said free Palestine were suddenly criminalized. That's not even, there's way worse free speech than that. And meanwhile, though, of course, if you want to abuse kids or do child porn or something like that on an island or in Las Vegas, oh, that's okay. No, nothing to see here. That's fine. Say free Palestine, you're going to be excommunicated. And, that's a real problem, because even in Virginia here, Virginia VCU, it's over in Richmond State University, they denied a number of Palestinians, one of whom has lost family members in Gaza. She's a grad student, or she's enrolled in grad school. Her bachelor's degree was withheld. She had to sue to get it back. And why was it withheld? Oh, she participated in a peaceful, non-armed demonstration, not very big, and said free Palestine. And I think she had the microphone and said, my family members, whatever, told her story. Denied her diploma. And so again, and for the young people, and this is something younger people are recognizing, the student debt thing, how much a pile of crap that is, the borrowing money for these degrees, and the government wanted everybody to do it, made it so easy, but the interest never stopped, so people pay off for years and they find out they owe more than they did. And baby boomers are impacted by this to some extent. Young people need to realize, when you reject empire, you are also going to be rejecting the empire's education system, which includes our four-year universities and all that. We have to question everything, and I think people are, but we have to exercise it. And also, we have plenty of jails, and we're building more jails. Lots of prisons. Our prisons are terrible. We might have to be willing to go to prison. We might have to be willing, and they will not put large groups in prison. However, back to Palantir, when I look at what they've done to Gaza, what the Israelis and the Americans, the American government at least, and American tax dollars have done to Gaza, and they're not done yet. They're not done yet. This is a planned and calculated genocide, and it's really a continuation of a long genocide. But it's a culmination of a belief system that people are expendable if they're in the way. And we can control them. We can control them through AI, through all kinds of databases. We can control them through terror, through psychological abuse, by killing their kids. All these things. It's all calculated. It's not just like, oh, we accidentally killed kids. No, they killed kids on purpose, because what's the most demoralizing thing you can do to people is kill their kids, right? And let them live. This is torture. This is state torture. It's by design. Yeah. And I look at that and I'm like, the rest of the world, but I don't care so much about the rest of the world. But Americans need to recognize, you don't think this could be done here? He's just loaded up. Trump's loaded up the National Guard because one of his buddies got mugged or got beat up. And yes, there's crime and bad things in Washington, D.C., but that's not a normal city. You want to fix crime in D.C.? Let D.C. run like a normal city. It is a federal community. Filled with free money and no incentives, and it's got big problems. But his solution was, we will go in, we will take charge, we will centralize control. We don't have guns yet, but they'll have guns soon. Yeah. Okay, DC, who cares? I don't care about DC. Honestly, I don't. But what about other towns? Because it's all practice. And I don't know if you remember. Well, I'm sure you do. You do. Back when they had the Boston Marathon bombing, the backpack bombings, or whatever. And that was one of the very first examples of a partial, it wasn't complete lockdown of the city of Boston, but it was pretty close to it. And they had never done that. Of course, Boston's a great city you can lock down. I mean, they've got a north road, a west road, east road, ocean. You can lock it down. And they did. They locked it down militarily. And some people, some libertarians, some other people on the left and the right said, wait a minute, this seems a little strange. Why are they going to do that? Well, they're doing it to practice, to see how it works, to fine tune their things. And they're genociding Gaza to see how it works. Yeah. What can we get away with? What works? What doesn't work?
Yeah.
It'll come home. It'll come home. And, I hate to say this, the chicken's coming home to roost. Who was it? Our great inspiration that talked about that back in the 60s. They killed him too. You know who I'm talking about?
No.
Oh my gosh. He wasn't. He wasn't a Black Panther, I don't think, but he might have been.
Fred Hampton?
No. Oh my gosh.
He was a Black Panther.
Yeah, this guy wasn't a Black Panther. He was a Muslim. I read his books.
You're talking about Malcolm X?
Yeah, Malcolm X. So Malcolm X said, "Chicken's coming home to roost." But of course, we all say that. I remember him saying it.
We say that a lot on the show because a lot.
Well, those chickens that are coming home to roost are coming, and we're going to see it because everything goes faster and is moving faster. We're going to see it sooner than we might expect. But yeah, all of this, the statism that we see domestically, and contrary to the Constitution, in my opinion, but clearly the Constitution has nothing to say about it, right? It's happening. So what good is the Constitution? Because it's all this centralization, this militarization, this surveillance state that's growing. What they're doing in Gaza, that's all practice. Yeah. Because I will say one thing. I know we have to quit, but there is Etienne de Boete was a guy. He was like a 20-year-old, 19-year-old guy, French guy in the 1500s, and he was educated. He was, I guess, from a noble family, and he did a couple of things that he wrote. But he wrote one. I wish I could think of the name of it. It's but he talked about the politics of disobedience was what he talked about. But the key question that he asked was the same one we're asking here, the same one you're asking. He said, how come the rulers are really just a small number of people? They're such a tiny, percentage, less than 1%, less than 1.1 of 1%, of the people. But all the people will obey them. When if it came right down to it, nobody has to obey them. We don't have to do that. And he wrote a whole essay on why he thought that was. And of course, fear is the big thing. And humans are collective creatures, and we don't want to be outcast. And so we are easily propagandized. But we're also human. We have these brains. We have an ability to see and to assess and to learn. So we really are quite powerful. But yeah, this is not a new problem in people doing what a small minority of evil, really true evil, directs us to do. We don't have to do it. So if I had to say, what are you going to do? Well, first off, let's practice disobedience. And it should be civil. Nothing wrong with that. It can be quasi-polite, although we're not a very polite society. So maybe it won't be that polite, but that's fine. But let's disobey more and practice that and plan for a different future that doesn't include the state that we are seeing, doesn't include the empire, because we don't have control. We are not in control of Donald Trump. Donald Trump said, once the Ukraine war is over, he has no conflicts to solve. Totally missing the biggest disaster on the planet.
And he's, not just the fact that he's ignoring the Gaza situation, which he has actually exacerbated, but the fact that the 7 wars that he ended, I didn't even know he ended one. That was like crazy to me. Look, I know you got to get out of here, Lieutenant Colonel, but I want to ask you one question, because if we're talking about Donald Trump's one accomplishment to his base, it's terrorizing the immigrant community. You're talking to two people over here who've gone down to Latin America, observed elections, which were much finer, transparent elections than we see over here. Nicaragua's election is far superior to the United States. Yep. Are illegal immigrants, and I got to do air quotes because I've used the term undocumented workers because I don't believe anybody is illegal. But when we have 800 military bases around the globe, 100 of them in Latin America, the same corporations that are screwing Americans at home are extracting the resources and stealing them in Latin America, We are picking their governments. We're putting in radicals like crazy. Like we supported the Mujahideen, but we also supported the Contras and murder death squads in El Salvador and Honduras. Are illegal immigrants really illegal in your mind? Don't they have a right to come here?
You muted. Go ahead.
Don't they have a right to come here since we have a base occupying their country?
Well, it's certainly a form of blowback, right? We cause situations which drive people from what could have been a really nice country, and so many examples. And Syria is another one that comes to mind. We've got that guy that he's ISIS guy running Syria that we said, oh, that's great.
Golani. He's buff. He's been working out. You see him in the suit. He went from his jihad outfit to a nice
and that's
suit.
And that's also about a resource grab. In addition to helping out our little buddies in Israel, it's a resource grab. We want their oil. What are we doing in Venezuela right now? It's a resource grab. So that's what empires do. And illegal. Look, if the government says it's illegal, it probably is the opposite. Whatever government says pretty much is a lie. So if they call them illegal, then we need to wonder why that is, because they are not in the interest of the state, but they're definitely in the interest of this country. And I don't know where I am. People are nervous. I imagine they are other places too. I mean, people that not necessarily what category they are, but because of this push, they may be seem to be in that category, and they're going to get punished just the same, and they'll sort it out in the end. Trump will sort it all out in the end. So it's really wrong. And also, our country was built on people coming to build something. And I think most of the people now, I don't buy illegal drugs. I don't deal with the stuff that Trump supporters and Trump himself says, oh, well, they're bringing in crime and all these different things that he talks about. I don't see that. Okay. The people that come here, I see the same as they did 200 years ago. They come here to build something, and they're working hard. So that should be what it is. And you know what? There's a place for them in this post-imperial world if we do it right, because a worse situation could come. I mean, they are preparing for fascist control. I mean, to mention Palantir, I believe what they're doing in Gaza is a dry run for what they will do elsewhere, and including in this country. Because think about it. How else are you going to control the people in this country? You've got to disarm them. That is one thing you don't have to do. The Palestinians were already disarmed, but they'll have to disarm us a little bit. But then they have to pile us. They'll have to control us. Even the idea of a 15-minute city, what kind of concept is that? That is a concept of centralized control. So it's coming, and we need to. And so just wake up. We need to wake up, lose our fantasies about government and about the state. And really, we should hate the empire. And what do we do when we hate the empire? What do we do when we hate anything? We
disobey.
Disobey. That's right. They have no credibility to tell anybody what to do. I mean, how could we even think that a government that murders babies and takes our money and lies about it to do this? How can I obey them on any topic? And also, you mentioned the military. I let you go, but you mentioned the military people. There's a whistleblower, ex-military guy. He was on Tucker Carlson. I don't know if you saw him. He was part of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation.
Tony Aguilar?
Yes, Aguilar. Yeah. And but he's not the only one. But he is one that's in there now. And of course, they want to shut him up. But he saw it with his own two eyes. And he made the decision, and he's not obeying anymore. So I think we can all do that. Anyway, I hope we all do that. We have
Lieutenant Colonel Karen Kwiatkowski. How do you say it?
Kwiatkowski. You just call me Karen.
I want to get it right because I'm part Polish. I'm mostly Italian and a little Polish. So I want to get it right. Thank you so much. It feels like we just started. There's so many more things I want to ask you, but we're wrapping up. We got to have you back on. Let everybody know where they can find you. They can see some of your readings. Obviously, you're on Judge Knapp once a week. I never miss a show. But let people know, and hopefully we'll get back on Crosstalk and get together again. Maybe we'll get on with a Trump supporter who still hasn't let go. And we can eat his lunch, and he'll have no roast beef. Your thoughts, Karen?
I agree. We should do that. I have a Substack and LouRockwell.com, and Judge Knapp has a place where he publishes op-eds and things. So everything that I write pretty much ends up on either the Substack or Lou Rockwell or judgenap.com.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Awesome.
Lieutenant Colonel Karen Kwiatkowski. I probably said it wrong, but I'm going to keep trying anyways. We love you. We'll see you again. Good luck on Judge Knapp, and look forward to seeing you in the future, Colonel.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. Lieutenant Colonel Karen Kwiatkowski. I've been practicing Kwiatkowski for the last 2 weeks, and it's not even how you fucking say it, fam.
I know she was on RT once, and I remember seeing her name. I was like, oh, at least they told me how to say it.
She's awesome. The reason why I really like her is because I think that she sees the bigger picture. I think a lot of military personnel think that whatever happens on the battlefield is actually what's going on. They don't see the globalists sitting on top of them. Now, the globalists on top of Russia or China might not have the power that Xi Jinping or Putin make, but they certainly are pulling the strings here in the United States. And I don't even think Donald Trump has a free say in anything. I think Colonel Karen K sees that, and a lot of other military personnel do not, and that's what makes her so valuable.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, that I was actually quite taken aback by the destruction of empire, because that's what I talk about all the time. Like,
she's got a Marxist mentality over there. Somebody should
she
tell her,
sounded a little bit like a Marxist. I don't know.
Marxist mentality. Blow it up.
I mean, it is happening, Pasta. I actually had that conversation with the economist Richard Wolff, who's a socialist, and he talked about like the empire in decline. So again, I think we're past the point in the United States, at least, of left right. I think we're at the point of top bottom, and I think more people are realizing it, and are understanding that that's where we are. But again, it's going to take some time. We're not organizing. I'm not for the voting stuff, because it's not going to do anything. I don't want to talk. I don't want to hear it about so-and-so, because we just don't have a fair voting system. We don't have a fair system where we can actually do something about it. So for me, it's we have to prepare for change that is going to be inevitable. It's already happening, but we have to lay down the groundwork in order for us to be able to do something with that. And that's why I like these conversations.
I liked their answer. Sorry to cut you off. I liked their answer on illegal immigration. Like the fact that, I say this all the time. The first thing I always say is, I'm fucking Italian. We came here. They called us WAPs without papers. They didn't know where we were coming from, what we had done, but they allowed us to come in and work. And we helped build New York. We helped build the Empire State Building and the Twin Towers before they went down. I mean, we were a big part of what was going on. They called us Zips, the Italians that came over, and they got that nickname because they said on the bricklayers that were mostly Italian were zipping around. And meaning it just showed the fact that just like the Mexicans and the Latin Americans that are coming in from the Northern Triangle and stuff like that, they're hard workers. They came here to build something. They came here to work. The majority of them, they commit less crime, statistically, less crime than American citizens. Illegal immigrants or undocumented workers are booked at a much lower rate. So, I mean, I liked her answer there too as well. And, she's got a lot of great things to say. Fam, we got 2 guests waiting in the wings. Why don't you just tell us where we can find you and what's going on with you and Vanessa Beeley, and when you got that coming out, and then I'll bring these 2 guys on. You can say goodbye to them. You can hang out if you want, but we're just going to talk boring COVID stuff. It's up to you.
It's not boring, but I'll let you guys have the platform. It's nice to see Edwin. I haven't seen him in a long time.
Let's bring him in and let you say goodbye to him then. Ladies and gentlemen, first off, our co-host is here, Matt Weinglass from the Homeless Left. You know him, you love him. Maybe you don't love him, but you got to love his glasses and that beautiful head he's got. Matt Weinglass is here with us. How you doing today, Matt?
Good. I rotate the glasses and the contacts depending on how I feel, but I like and I like the Hawaiian look we did yesterday on the show. Yeah. And loving the interviews that just happened. This is a common theme, and I'm excited about the next conversation. It's the theme of when we wake up, or whatever that term is, red pill, black pill. There's a moment that we have this aha moment, and how do we get more people to do that? Or is it something that's natural, that happens organically? Do we play a role with these conversations we have? So that's what I'm always thinking about that. So I just thought that was great with Lieutenant Colonel Karen just kind of saying, I was in the military. I understand this. There's so many people that don't understand it. But this is the ongoing discussions we have to continue to have.
So let's bring in our guy so Sophie can say goodbye. Ladies and gentlemen, he was very much like us when COVID hit, a leftist that pushed back against Big Pharma, some of the authoritarian mandates. He resides in New York. You could see a couple videos with him, not actually just talking the talk, but walking the walk. He would show up to the hearings for those who refused to take a vaccine to keep their job, and he spoke for them. Ladies and gentlemen, Edwin Dejesus is here with us today.
Hey everyone, second time on the show. Nice to see you all again. Fiorella, it's been a long time. Great to see you.
Great to see you. I didn't know you were in New York. I was just in New York for a short time. I would have hit you up. But yeah, no, I'm glad you're as a leftist going to talk about this stuff, because obviously for a while, Pasta and I and a few others were the few people talking about the pandemic and the COVID stuff. And recently there's been a lot of people that have been clearly affected and impacted from the vaccines, and all of that is coming out. So I look forward to hearing you guys talk about it. And as for me, I'm going to allow you guys to chat. I'll dip out. I just released a podcast, another episode of Critical Perspective, talking about Russia and the Alaska summit and all of that. So there's more on that coming, but it's a pretty deep dive, and we're talking about a global war. Some of these things we touched on with Lieutenant Colonel Karen, where we talk about a global war coming for us. And I think this conversation that are about to have is part of that mechanism, because these are the same people, the same entities behind a lot of this. So take it away, guys, and nice to see you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. There goes the boss, ladies and gentlemen. She is a boss, Fiorella Isabel. I love the fact that she's still my business partner 7-8 years later. We've been doing this and rocking for so long. She is truly amazing, and I love the work she's been doing with Vanessa Beeley. Let's jump right into it, Edwin. Why don't you give us a little breakdown really quickly before we do that? Let's set the stage. Let's set the scene. Let's let people know where we're at. Obviously, years ago, it's been a couple years since the COVID protocols ended, right? They ended with Putin ended them when he went to war with Ukraine, because then everybody in Congress, they stopped with their COVID protocols, took their little Ukrainian flags out, and all of a sudden forgot everything that was going on. Why don't you bring us up to date where we are now from what happened with the COVID protocols and what it's going to be looking like moving forward with some of the information and the news you got. And we'll throw up any articles you want at any time that you gave us. Edwin Dejesus, ladies and gentlemen, bringing us up to date.
I like how you actually brought the connection to Russia, because the stock market topped at the peak of Omicron variant back in December of 2022, right? So this was right before the invasion of Ukraine, and that's when you started to see, or I'm sorry, December of 2021 rather, and that's when you started to see the stock market then, go volatile again. They needed something else to start moving the markets, and so it was all like the oil and everything that was affected by the war. But the ripple effects of the pandemic are still occurring today. And the pillaging that Wall Street has done onto the working class still continues. And the politicians that are being put into the spotlight right now as like saviors of progressivism are still very much in bed with a lot of these forces that were, basically castrating the American public and the global population at large, who were forced to take this medical experiment with this mRNA shots that, are frankly never been done on a mass scale before, but it was tested on a mass scale all at once. And so there's like this conflation of what is public safety? What does public safety mean to you? Does it mean like giving up your bodily autonomy for the greater good? And even so, if you were to do that, is it actually for the greater good? Like, was it clear back during the pandemic that the shots didn't prevent transmission? It was, at least to people who were paying attention. But the argument was, well, it's a selfish act if you don't do it because you're harming your neighbor, when in reality that was never the truth.
Yeah. Just right now, I want to stop and say You sound like a homophobic Nazi with all these things that you are saying right now. What was the other one they used, Matt? Did I miss one?
Well, I mean, clearly he's anti-science.
He's anti-science.
Conspiracy theorist.
Yes.
And you know, we're
misogynistic. Misogynistic.
Territory too. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No. There's a whole list for it, but we all experienced that during the you killed the messenger. We're just trying to have conversations. But yes, this is the conversations that were so hard to have being lefties, right? But all the medical freedom movement had the kind of like this right-wing vibe to it, but we all should have come together. This should never have been politicized. That's the problem. Is it was a people movement that it should have been, and now it's been politicized the whole way. But yeah, please continue, and remind everyone that this is still affecting us right now, of course.
Absolutely. Yeah. And some of the things that, I was involved in at the time was the March for Medicare for All, which had a diverse coalition of people involved, some who were skeptical of mandates, some who weren't. And that actually led to another protest that we did called Occupy Pfizer, where we basically all pretended to die in front of the Pfizer headquarters and laid on the ground and gave speeches. And that was mostly independent leftists. There were maybe some people there on the right, but that was actually more of like a left-inspired event. And then even when I was working with Dr. Cornel West, you may or may not remember, there was a tweet that he put out right when RFK Jr. dropped out that was basically saying, this campaign is for all of you on the left or on the right who are against vaccine mandates. And RFK himself actually responded to Dr. West thanking him for putting that tweet out. And so that was something that, I worked with Dr. West on.
The whole thing is when we did the show on Jimmy, by the way, and when I was on Jimmy Dorn, I did that whole show. I said, listen, this guy right here, Edwin Dejesus, he was part of the medical freedom movement from the left. Maybe he can convince Cornel West into at least opening his eyes and listening to us. And I think that, once again, I don't want to say that I called it, but I called it, and I'm glad you got him there. I just can't imagine. I wish to God that he would have changed his rhetoric a little bit as far as calling Donald Trump and his supporters neo-fascist and Joe Biden and his supporters neoliberals. I think that really kind of was very uneven, and a lot of people looked at it like it was an endorsement to capitulate to the two-party system. In other words, he was kind of saying in some ways, and I know he won't admit to this, but he was kind of saying that the Democrats are lesser of two evils. That's what I felt when he said that. But I'm very appreciative that you opened his eyes, and he did make the tweet. And you're right, RFK did say, hey, Dr. West, I'm glad you've opened your eyes. We had talked about possibly maybe we can put on an event, and we never got to it because so much stuff was going on. But I think you did a great job. Where is he at on that nowadays? Have you heard from him or spoke to him?
Just to clarify, he was always against the mandates, right? So part of my job was to kind of help communicate that. He mentioned it on with an interview with you.
But after he had 3 shots, he still was like, I took 3 shots and I stopped. I'm not for the mandates. Yeah, but that's a problem. Keep continuing, please.
Well, I'll say, at least people who got the shot and are against mandates, I mean, I have nothing against that. As long as you do you and you're comfortable with people doing what they do, that's amazing. That's like somebody, saying I personally would never get an abortion, but I will fight for the right for you to be able to do that if you want to do that, right? Like you cannot like abortion, but still be pro-choice, right? So
we are indifferent at that because at the end of the day, I've said this before, it's not enough just to be against the mandates. You have to call balls and strikes, and you have to call the shot for what it is, right? If you look at Pfizer's own simple data on their shot, it tells you everything about the shot. The myocarditis, the hyperturbo cancers that are now hitting the States. I mean, to me, I hear what you're saying, but I think it required a little bit more than that. That was the least position, the last position, the smallest position you could hold, where I'd still say no, you need to do more and talk about against it. But go ahead, buddy.
Can I just jump in real quick on that? So it's a process for people. I think we talk about everyone's going through their own process, and we're not in Cornel West's head. We don't know when these aha moments have occurred, but we can say this: the fight against mandates was a real thing. The trucker convoy in Canada was a real thing. And people don't realize the numbers of truckers that showed up to that. 90% or more, I believe it was somewhere between 90 and 95% of them were vaccinated. They weren't there. So as Edwin said, they weren't there to go against the shot. But I mean, Craig, obviously we have to talk about the actual poison people put in their bodies and the deliberate, nefarious, getting that into people. But the mandate itself is a principle on its own that people can go out and say, you cannot force someone to do something against their will. And the Canadian truckers were saying that. They took it and they were saying, don't force other people to do it if they don't want to do it. So there is a distinction there, and there is a step process, I think, between which protests, what the demands of each protest are, and we have to be clear about those demands per protest. But it would be nice, what Craig is saying, that Cornell goes further and says, let's look at the actual thing that people put in their bodies. Mm-hmm. So, but back to the we're talking about this the medical freedom movement itself kind of being fractured in a way right now. I mean, you have this Maha movement, right? You have these Maha people that on one hand, yes, they got in, they used the Trump ticket to get in. Here we are. You've got RFK Jr. saying the right things some of the time, most of the time, but the actions aren't lining up with a lot of the rhetoric. What is happening right now that you're seeing, Edwin, as far as this Maha movement frankly being fractured right now? Is there anything being done to push harder, or are you seeing a lot of people in denial about the fact that they're just happy that RFK Jr. is in and that's good enough? But what is the next step? Because you got people in there, but then nothing's happening. You're not get the mRNA still on the shelves. I mean, that's the biggest problem right now. Yeah. mRNA still on the shelves.
Isn't it still part of the scheduled list for kids? Isn't it still under emergency use authorization and still on the vaccine schedule? I believe it is. So, yeah. Go ahead, Edwin.
I mean, there have been advancements made, right? I think I don't know if it is still on that schedule. I thought I saw something about it being removed, but it could have been something else. What I did see, though, was him talking about some sort of universal vaccine and then deleted that tweet. And then also more recently, there was a backtracking where there was something else in the news that I had just seen that was kind of a clear indication that Maha had been compromised, besides that universal vaccine tweet. And now it just escaped me. So you're gonna have to come back to me in a second on that. But there was something that it was related to they want to ban, I believe, some sort of compound related to kratom or kratom. Yeah. And so it's like a furtherance of the war on drugs, which is antithetical to everything that the medical freedom movement is about. So when you see things like that happening, some people might say, hey, I think this movement has been compromised. There must be some sort of big pharmaceutical influence that cannot be eliminated out of these federal agencies, at least not with Donald Trump as the president, who we know is the architect of Operation Warp Speed and has the final say over someone like RFK Jr. So, I think there's a lot of people in the medical freedom movement who are still subscribed to, those Del Bigtree and the Children's Health Defense, and might kind of have a separation between that and what is currently happening in the federal government itself, led by RFK Jr. But there hasn't been any protests or really big accountability movements held against him specifically. I feel like that might happen in the near future, but because we're only half a year into this administration, it still feels like too soon for that energy to brew into something more organized. But I do predict that in the near future, you will see some people who very closely support him kind of coming together as more of these things keep happening. And as they add on and pile up, it might lead to a boiling point where more people are willing to actually have a more stronger stance or protest and say, hey, we've been with you this whole time. What's going on? I think there's still a little bit of a honeymoon phase going on with that base.
By the way, I just pulled up right here, just so we know, And it says simply, and what they did is they changed the language. It says the COVID-19 vaccine still remains on the official CDC immunization schedule for children aged 16 months, from children aged 6 months to 17 years. So it's there for children. But with a shift from the routine recommendation to a shared clinical decision-making, parents and doctors decide together whether vaccination is appropriate based on individual health risk. And I also asked if it's still under emergency use authorization. When the vaccines rolled out, I'm trying to see. I think it still is, but I can't get a straight answer.
It's still under
from Chat GPT. So it looks like it's still under it. Yeah. So I mean, they still have protections. You can't sue them. That's a big issue. So we're still kind of dealing with it. Why don't you talk about what's going on in New York as far as this is concerned? The Medicare Advantage foe is back independent for the next New York mayor and retirees vote. What is this all about, and why isn't Mamdani delivering? I think last week we showed the video of him saying that he still wouldn't hire the people back that lost their job. And then he was saying the talking points from Pfizer, directly from Pfizer. Hey, when we know it's going to be for public health, then public health people need to be the first to do it. Not even caring the fact that there was no due process. And I said, this is a learning lesson for the Trump people out there. When they take away due process from everybody, even the illegal immigrants that you're talking about, they'll take it away from you. And they did in New York. Where are we at, Edwin?
So Medicare Advantage, this was a big problem going into the Democratic primary. It's sort of been temporarily resolved, but there's still a problem with this that any day, depending on, let's say, assuming Mamdani becomes mayor, this decision could be reversed. So basically, all these retirees were being potentially thrown out of their normal health insurance plans. And they were being, under the leadership of Eric Adams, an effort to force them onto Medicare Advantage, which doesn't provide the same quality of care as the plans that they are normally on. And so you have people like Marianne Pizzatola, who leads the organization for retired public services, right? Who were fighting against this effort to basically kind of push their plans into this more private plan, right? Medicare Advantage is like a semi-privatized version of Medicare. And it was a big fight. And these retirees were coming out and protesting constantly. And it actually had a great impact. It went to the courts. And in fact, the courts ruled that they could be forced onto these plans. And that was somewhat of a blow, but because of the political pressure that they were exerting and that leverage that they were pushing onto the administration, he ultimately, despite what the court said that I'm not going to put you on these plans. But it's not a permanent decision. The next mayor could change it. And there's currently a bill that's being held in committee in the New York City Council. I think it's like Intro 1096. That bill would codify that health insurance coverage for these retirees permanently. But right now, you don't have the presumptive next mayor of New York City, Zoran Mamdani, promising to champion that legislation. What he did say in the article is that he agrees with the spirit of the legislation, which is another way of saying, I don't support it, but you guys are cute for trying. And the reason for that is because he needs the endorsements of certain unions that are compromised, whose leaders are in bed with the Democratic Party in New York City. And those unions are pushing for Medicare Advantage, probably because their leaders get some sort of kickback or something like that. The rank and file, for the most part, does not want this. But the fact that he is kowtowed to those union leaders instead of his own voters goes to show that this is quite dangerous territory where, he's proving that, like any other politician, that it's really about, okay, if I get the endorsement from the unions, I'm willing to kind of throw this away for the others. So he has not made a pledge to that retiree organization that he would follow through on that intro 1096 bill. And to me, that is, I think, really troubling and concerning, because that proves, in addition to what we've already discussed about him not wanting to rehire those who are fired from mandates, proves that he doesn't view healthcare as a human right, that if you don't take it, you should lose your job, which is anti-worker, and that if the political winds blow in another direction, that he would be willing to potentially get those workers on a privatized healthcare plan, which is the opposite of all the values of compassion that he claims to espouse.
Wow. When you say won't codify it, I start thinking, Matt, I don't know about you, but I start thinking about Roe v. Wade, right? Like the non-codification. And not that I want it codified, it's the fact that that's what they were promising to their base. You're saying that, when it comes to this situation for Mandami, when it comes to the medical freedom movement's desires and needs, when it comes to the libertarians, this is not our guy, because he obviously will walk the walk of a Democratic Party elites. And he seems to be taking a lot of money from the same people who supported AOC, Barack Obama. It's like the same type of character coming our way. Where is he on other issues, though? I mean, have you found enough reasons to go and still support this guy despite his lack of movement in the medical freedom movement? I mean, is he still standing out, or is somebody like Curtis Sliwa, who is even though he's running on the Republican ticket, might be a better choice? Your thoughts, Edwin, because you're there.
It's a tough question, right? I don't necessarily know who I would want to vote for between those two, because, well, first of all, I wouldn't vote for Zoran. That's because of his positions on the mandates, and that to me that is a bigger issue than anything else, because that's something that the mayor has direct control over. While I very much appreciate his willingness to speak out against the crimes of Israel, that is not something that the mayor has direct control over. That's foreign policy. So when it comes to actually exerting his power over the workers of New York City on domestic issues, he fails. So in that way, I don't view him as a people's candidate. Curtis Sliwa, on the other hand, has been on the ground with New Yorkers for many, many years. I would say that I disagree with him on other things, but where he stands on the mandates is the correct issue. And so, look, I don't think I would necessarily vote for either one of them. I mentioned in the last episode that I did vote for Sliwa in 2021, but now I think that there are some shortcomings that every candidate has in this race. And to be honest with you, I just don't like this race. And going back to what Fiorella said, I'm kind of on her wavelength now of like, this electoral politics thing is so rigged that it's almost like an incoherent question to ask, like, who do you support over the other? Because it's no matter what, you're going to end up, at least in this election, with bad choices.
So I would say, because we've seen this happen so many times, especially from the left perspective, we've seen this happen with Obama. We've seen it with AOC. We've seen it with Bernie. We even see a newer model of RFK Jr. saying, I'm stronger than Bernie. I'm going to leave the Democratic Party. I'm going to go over here. And then you're also going to be compromised. So it's this compromise after compromise after compromise. So with Mamdani, we're seeing the compromise happening earlier than ever before. He's not even in office yet, and he's telling us that he's captured. We're seeing it. And so from my vantage point, I think it's one thing to say, we're out, we're checked, we're not going to participate in this because that's the definition of insane, right? You do the same thing over and over, and you expect a different result, you're going to get the same thing. So that's one thing. We're going to say no more of this. I think it's another thing that we have to shout about it now. We can't do the wait and see. Let's see what happens when he gets in there, because we already know the blueprint. I look at this as like, this is like the Terminator model. This is like they got a new version of the same thing, and it's better, a better model, a better T1000, right? You got they're working out the kinks that Obama had, or AOC had to wait to get in to then compromise to Mama Bear, right? So now you got this model that knows how to sell this message. And I'm going to circle back to, you said earlier in the interview, Edwin, the message of for the greater good. This is probably the most dangerous message of all, because this is the one that gets into our blood, into our very essence, of what we think of society and family and community. And we say for the greater good. They trained us with COVID. And he's telling us right now, I don't care about principle. I care about for the greater good. What that is code for is the elitist plan to get what they need to get done. That's it. So we have to sign up for that, and it supersedes morality. Are you seeing kind of the same thing? And I would say, to back that up, wouldn't it be our responsibility now to shout about this now and not wait until the sellout happens when he's in office? Like, do it now, because we know this game and we know that they've gotten this good at doing this.
I was saying the same exact thing in 2020 when all of the Bernie supporters had that movement settle for Joe Biden, right? Everyone was settling for Biden. They said, oh, we could just push him left after he gets into office, not realizing that all of the leverage is during the election. That's when you get concessions. That's when you can exert power over these politicians and get them to make campaign promises that they can then deliver on when they're in office. Once they're in office, they're only going to respond to their donors, not to you. So everything you're saying makes complete and total sense. These conversations need to be had now. It shouldn't be a let's wait and see how they govern. It's no, let's set the preconditions for how they govern now as an active voting public, and not as like some sort of spectators who will comment and criticize later on when we have no leverage because they're already in office. So exactly what you just said, Matt.
You know, I don't think that any candidate's going to make a difference. Once again, they're controlled by the money. If anybody, any candidate shows that he's going to has a conscious decision to make decisions outside of the establishment, it seems like Curtis Lewa. But I think that at the end of the day, we're going to get some type of, what do they call it, November surprise, September surprise. Something's going to happen. It's going to be out there, and I think we're going to see Eric Adams back in office. I don't know. Elections are not fair in New York. They are really fugazi, and I mean, when he won last time, I think they had discovered 120,000 ballots. Test ballots had made it into the system and counted. And they gave us that Democratic math that they always give. Well, those 120,000 votes wouldn't have made a difference anyway, so we're going to go along with it. But yeah, that's only what we know about. What don't we know about it? That shows that's a fraudulent election. Eric Adams gets a big win from the court in the retired New York worker healthcare battle, but most of his rivals vow to kill it anyways. I think you already explained about this, but what does this mean for a guy like Eric Adams moving forward? If he gets that slot back in there, what are we to expect out of this guy?
That's a good question. Eric Adams really, as I mentioned in the last episode, continued what de Blasio started. De Blasio started that private sector mandate. Eric Adams is the one who really continued it into his first term. And so I have every reason to believe that anyone who thinks Eric Adams is now somehow like more friendly to workers, or now that he's more black-pilled, or it's nonsense. It's an illusion. This guy is directly responsible for basically exploiting New Yorkers' bodies and basically threatening them that they can't keep their jobs unless they get the shot. Yeah. The fact that he did that while mayor in his first term, it shows that a second term will not be any better. In fact, if he doesn't have to run for office again, he could do whatever he wants. He would be in his lame duck term, cause even more damage. So I have absolutely zero trust in someone like Eric Adams. He's corrupt. He's not our friend, and he's definitely not a friend of any pro-worker movement. I think he would be very bad for New York City, and he would be just as destructive as someone like as Zoran could be.
Matt?
I would never give the guy a second chance if I was in New York. Absolutely not. I mean, and the litmus test has always been, I mean, we can say it here, we're all on the same team here, but anybody tuning in and doesn't understand this, COVID was the litmus test for moral accountability. That's it, period. And you can apply that to other things. I'm not saying you can't apply that. You can apply that to and across the board to the military industrial complex and all of our nefarious behavior and our foreign activities. But COVID was right here in our own communities, and what we were willing to do and the way our politicians talked to us, governed us, shamed us, bullied us, lied to us, have no accountability The fact that there's so many of them still pretending that that's in the rearview mirror, those actions are what we're going to hold you accountable for moving forward. And there's no way around it. There's only one way out of it. And they have to tell us to our face, not only they screwed up, but they caused damage and they're forever sorry. And they will never do this again. And that's the only way out of it. So no, I don't have any, I'm right with you on that. And if I wouldn't even give him a second look. And what does it even mean being black? We say being black-pilled. It's like being black-pilled is having these conversations that we're having that they're not. So I don't even know what that pill is that he took. It's just theater, really, to kind of distinguish him from the other Democrats that look even worse. That's it. That's just the distinguished element, I think. And we see that happen too. That's a theatrical maneuver to get him into his own little area. We're like, oh, he's got some courage. He's going to start standing up for the people. No, that's not happening.
Well, you know what? Let me just piggyback on that too, Edwin. And I got a question there. Is that, we do see. I mean, I don't know. We've been talking about the medical freedom movement. We started this segment because we thought it was right. The time was ripe for the left to start having talks about COVID and the mandates and whatnot with people that once participated in cancel culture. I mean, that event that you spoke at when you followed Walker Bragman, by the way, and I wasn't supposed to say his name on the show. Fiorella said, don't ever say that name on the show again because it makes us nauseous. But you did get a chance to speak at the medical freedom movement. I remember watching live because I was so excited to hear it, because that guy, he talked out openly about me being on the stage. He didn't say my name, but him and Hassan Piker said, there are people who are against the vaccine in the Medicare for All march. That's ridiculous. And eventually they removed me from the stage. I didn't get a chance to speak. What are your thoughts about where we are now? Are there people that have come over? Are there people that have opened their eyes? Are there people who have kind of displayed the same behavior as a Cornel West to say, you know what, maybe I should take a little bit look. I'm open to listening. Where do you think we're at with that movement right now?
It's a very interesting question because I haven't really seen like a growth curve for a lot of people on the left, like who've come, to their senses. I feel like
not even a little. Like you haven't gotten. I've gotten phone calls now with the Epstein stuff coming out from Democrats that ask me about HARP. Like they're starting to come around with the fires, and they're starting to get a little curious. You haven't got a little bit of that, Edwin? Like somebody calling and saying, what is mRNA really? Did it come from DARPA?
I think the only people that really kind of backed off a little bit on that issue are like Bill Maher's audience, because he's the only like liberal that they can trust who spoke out about mandates. And so people who watch that show perhaps have kind of lightened up a bit on it. But besides that, I personally have not seen people ever say, you know what? I was wrong. I'm sorry for things that I said back during the pandemic that were authoritarian. I haven't seen not one politician apologize, and I certainly haven't seen any influencers apologize.
Yeah, that's a major problem moving forward, because we go back to this greater good thing, and what we like to do is connect that with other issues. When we see people have to get on board to stop Trump for the greater good. People have to get on board, to protect Israel, because, whatever the thing is, that we have to stop anti-Semitism now. That's the most important thing. And to have somebody like RFK, which is, I think, the worst type of contradiction, hypocrisy. It's so disgusting to see a guy who knows what it's like to be on one side of the censorship machine and the bullying and the defamation, all this stuff. And then to cross over to the other side and play the other role of, and he's literally tweeting out on the HHS website and Twitter account that the number one problem on college campuses for health is anti-Semitism. It's insane. And so if we can't even get the people to talk about how wrong COVID was and for the greater good, how horribly awful that was, how can we talk about these other issues too? Because it's the same mechanism of control. It's the groupthink mentality. It's to get everybody on board for something that they don't even know what it is. They don't even know what the goal is. I don't even understand how we can connect this if we can't even take somebody like RFK and get him consistent on this issue in multiple issues with the principle's not there. And so for people to actually apologize is never going to happen if we don't even understand that it was a compromise of principle. It wasn't just that they didn't have the information or they were confused or they were lied to. They didn't start from square one with principle. So maybe that's something we can start talking about more to kind of connect everything. Is start talking about that moral compass and principle, and that will help us look for the red flags of that happening again and say, there you guys go with that greater good talk. We know what that leads to. Maybe that's the way we can do something. I don't know. I'm spitballing here, but it seems like we haven't really made that progress. Like Craig's saying, we haven't heard apologies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, even before RFK joined the administration, the minute he started campaigning for president, he was shilling for Israel and promoting Zionism. And so, it became like, okay, so you were right on this moral issue about vaccines, but when it comes to a genocide and having tens of thousands of babies murdered, now you're showing you don't have a moral compass. And so it's funny because I would say that those are the two biggest, like you said, kind of moral compass detectors that we've had in this decade. And usually people are right on one and wrong on the other. But I guess in some instances, especially in this circle here, when you have kind of independents who can say, this is the same about both and be right on both issues, that's a pretty rare thing. And I think it just frustrates people when you can't put us in a box. I think it just gets upsetting when people can't connect you with certain symbols or concepts and say, oh, well, they must be on this team. I think that just frustrates people.
Maybe censorship is the connector. I mean, I try to have these conversations about, like, let's say, hey, look, let's put, even as somebody who's like right on about the medical freedom movement, they're right on. Okay, great. You got that. You understand how propaganda works. You understand how fear works. You understand how being mad at your neighbor and uninviting people to Thanksgiving is wrong and forcing. So you get all that. Okay. And the people getting canceled and censored and bullied and shamed, they're the good guys because they don't want them to talk. Yeah. So those are the ones you want to look at. Okay, great. So switch over to Israel and you're like, who's being canceled? Who's being censored? What laws are being put into place? That's where I kind of try to have that conversation. Even if, okay, everything you say is right. Hamas is horrible and Israel isn't doing anything wrong and da da da. Okay, why do we need these laws in place to criminalize if you talk about free Palestine? Why do you need
because
that?
It's anti-Semitic, Matt.
But I'm saying this is kind of a technique. I say, look, if I wake up tomorrow and all of a sudden it's illegal to say anything bad about if you switch it and say it's illegal to say anything bad about Palestine and Hamas, then I would get curious. I go, why is there a law for that? So so maybe censorship is the connector of the morality factor where you can put politics aside and say, why is one side not getting punished and the other side isn't? Maybe that could be a starting point. I'm just spitballing here, but it's like if that's the goal to kind of build more people in this very small space we're in, where we got everything right, maybe that is it. Do you think maybe censorship can be kind of a connector? Or is there a better way that you take as far as trying to start this conversation and getting more of a connecting populist movement here?
No, I definitely love the way that you're describing censorship as that connective tissue. And sure enough, you have Donald Trump, who is now friends with big tech. All of these Silicon Valley elites have come to kiss the ring, give him his gifts, say what what he wants him to hear. I don't know if anyone saw the latest episode of South Park where they all get in a line to tell him that he doesn't have a small penis. That's basically what it is. It's sycophancy. And now because of that, the same people that were censoring a lot of the people in his movement and in his base, he's now wielding the same power, using the platforms of like Palantir, for example, to spy on Americans and to basically, wage a war on universities on the premise of anti-Semitism, and wielding that and weaponizing it to cut funding where he sees fit, which is just violations of freedom of speech, which everyone thought was like the number one reason to vote for Donald Trump, but clearly it's not. So I 100% agree with you that the censorship is that connective tissue that would actually bring together both parties of this duopoly, engage in censorship in one way or another. And it becomes very problematic when you can designate someone as a terrorist just because they speak up for Palestine. That is a huge issue.
Yeah. Like I said, that clip that we played with Mandami saying, I would probably be on the side of not hiring them back. But the points that people, and I'm assuming, I don't know who those two gentlemen were, but by seeing them have an NYPD sign behind them and the other guy having an American flag, I would assume those guys voted for Trump, right? Like I would assume they were people from the conservative side. They were pressing the issue. Well, these people lost their job without any due process. And this is something I've been screaming about. Well, yeah, this is what they did to you. And you guys, you were so mad that the other side said, okay, well, no, this is about for the greater good. They don't deserve due process. Just get them out of there. They shouldn't be in hospitals working, even though these essential workers were working without before the shot came out for years, you know what I'm saying? And didn't even get a chance to get their say in court. Okay. Next week, are you going to be able to come on next Friday with us like normal and do this segment? Because I think we set the table for what I want to start doing next week. Next week you'll be good unless something big comes up?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the question I got for you next week. Next week's big question is if you're talking to a group of Democrats, Edwin, that went along with Big Pharma's shot, give them 3 reasons, and I want data with this, why they shouldn't take it. Do you think you can provide that to the show next week and we will put that out there so people can kind of get their ears and their eyes open to maybe coming on and listen to us?
Yeah, I'm a little confused about the question. So they took the question is if they took the shot, give them 3 reasons not to take a second shot or like a booster
moving
or
forward. Why they shouldn't have taken it, why they still shouldn't take it, why they shouldn't get boosters, you know what I'm saying? Why they shouldn't have taken the shot to begin with in the first place is okay. I just want 3 reasons why they shouldn't have taken the shot.
Sure.
I know that's kind of tough because you're already telling somebody who's committed to the whole mentality of what was going on by putting it in their system, and now they're going to double down even more and dig their feet in. But, I still think there's a group of people out there that are still considering when the new shot comes out, because that's what it said. They've made new formulas for the new up and coming variant. And here's the thing. Another vaccine could be on the horizon if another pandemic hits again. So I think I would like some reasons why they shouldn't have taken it, why they shouldn't take it if they haven't taken it, why they shouldn't do boosters. Give me those reasons next week. Are you down for something like that to get yourself into even more trouble?
Sure. It sounds like a fun experiment.
Well, we want to get people in here. We want to get leftists in here. Hopefully they'll get in the chat and they'll push back and you can answer them too as well. So hopefully that will happen next week and I'll advertise it.
I just want to jump in. I recalled because we talked about Bill Maher earlier and how he got his audience to at least be open to listen. Was just his personal experience. I remember he had said, I took one for the team. That's what they told me to do. I did it. I'm done. Yeah. That was his thing. He goes, I did the one, and then that you told me to do it. I did it. I'm done. So I took one for the team. Don't tell me to do more. And I think the audience, because it's that his audience would never listen. They would never want to hear any of this other stuff. The McCullough and all the other stuff. They wouldn't want to hear that. But just, hey, we did the thing you said. So I think that started the conversation there, at least. But there's so many. This is a fun one, Craig, because there's so many angles you can take with this. Because there's it's such a long list. We have to
it's a long list, but there's certain buzzwords out there that if you go near, you could scare the people away. Yeah. Edwin has to think, and these are people he's worked with before. I mean, we're lifelong leftists, aren't we? I mean, I don't know if Edwin was a Republican before, but I'm a lifelong leftist. My very first vote at 18 was Ross Perot because I was objecting to the system against Bill Clinton and George Herbert Walker Bush. But other than that, I've only been registered as a Democrat. So I want to see what Edwin comes up with because this is an experiment that we're trying. Because we've said this before. There are people in Nicaragua that when I go back, I was supposed to go back this year. We're supposed to sit down and have long conversations about COVID. They're ready to have these conversations. I want to know how we get the people involved in New York City. How we get people involved in the United States, how we get people who were just dug their feet in that thought they were doing what they were doing for the greater good. How do we convince them of something different? And Edwin Dejesus needs to go soon because there's his baby crying, said, enough, Daddy. But Edwin, let us know where we can find you, what's going on, and any other news you got before we get you out of here.
Yep, I'm on YouTube as Lights Camera Edwin, and on X as Edwin for NYC. I'll probably be starting a new channel at some point. So when I do, I'll make sure to plug that name, since I'll probably start doing my own podcast, and then I'll have you guys on there too. So that'll be cool.
We're only talking about COVID. There's so many things we can talk about. And you know a lot about a lot of things. You're not just. I hope the audience doesn't just understand that I've just cornered Edwin to talk about this one subject. It's a subject that we have a unique experience together, where we align on, where we were outcasted in certain ways. We were not part of our group, but we had the courage to say those things, and that's why I brought him on. But Edwin, being the campaign manager for Cornel West, he was chosen for that, and a lot of work he's done with the Green Party in the past is because he's got a knowledge about a lot of other things. So maybe we can also talk about the immigration situation. And I think that the Republicans and the right, I don't know if you just want to flat out call it racism, Edwin, but it's definitely, and maybe Cornel West would be proud of this because I've used that word. It's neo-xenophobic what they're doing over here, because they think if they fix that problem, if they picked up all the immigrants and got them out of here, that everything's just going to magically fall into place. Final words, Edwin, before you get on out.
Yeah, same thing with Bernie Sanders saying, hey, Netanyahu's the problem. It's not like Israel fundamentally, treating Palestinians like they're inferior. It's all Netanyahu. No, that's not the case. And let's stop redirecting the anger towards one person to understand it's a systemic issue that goes decades back. Same thing with racism in America and immigration.
Edwin Dejesus, ladies and gentlemen, he'll be starting his own channel. He'll be back here next week to answer the next week's big question. If he's talking to a group of Democrats, some of them take the shot, some of them think of it taking the shots. Some of them are getting in line for the next pandemic to take a shot. Why shouldn't they take it? Edwin Dejesus, everybody. Congratulate him. He's just a new daddy. We love you, Edwin. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, guys. See you next time.
He's awesome. We love you, Edwin. All right. So, Matt, what do you got going on? We got to get out of here. Jayme's got to run to another show.
Oh, no, I'm just glad to be back in action. We were out for 2 weeks, and we had a great show yesterday, and was on with Garland. That was awesome. You guys should check it out. Homeless Left on Rumble. We keep all of our stuff up, so you guys can go see the live replay. Man, we did a 4.5, I think, yesterday. We were doing these like 4-hour shows twice a week, Tuesdays, Thursdays. So we're back in the game now. And we'll have a couple more shows next week, and we'll let you guys know when we're on. And I love the TruthWire show coming on, and this was a great episode today, Craig. So thanks for having me part of it.
Gerald Celente was on with us yesterday.
Oh yeah, that was a great one.
The areas where we disagree, where there's not a lot of disagreements, I understand where he's coming from, the individual responsibility, but there is a programming of our children and pushing them towards fast food and quick products and colorful advertising. He knows about it. However, at the end of the day, I think he is mainly right. It's up to the individual to take, life into their own hands, eat healthier food. But Matt, they don't even teach home ec in schools anymore. So,
I think what we were trying to do, and maybe there just wasn't enough time because we didn't even get to by the way, we had them build to talk about Ukraine. So I ended up doing the segment with Jay later after you took out, and we did the Ukraine segment. But this conversation, they go by like that, right? Like you got somebody booked for 45 up to an hour, they're out, and you're like, man, we barely got started. So I think we were talking about big food, big pharma, specifically big food. And I just think, I agree. I think that he was big on individual responsibility. But what we were trying to do was put the other factors on the table to consider that they existed. That was it. But I agree too. I think that we were all in the kind of the same camp. But he wanted the kind of the quick, like, no, it's personal responsibility, move on. And I was like, wait a minute. We have these other factors to consider. That was all. But I think, we'll look back. We're going to upload the interview separately. You guys can check it out on the Homeless Left channel. It was a great conversation. Absolutely. With Celente. He's amazing. And that kind of energy, we need that like every day. We need that loudness he's like a much better, what we would hope like a Dr. Shiva would be. Gerald Celente is that.
Somebody did in the chat say, does this guy hang out with Gerald Celente? What I call what Gerald is all about is necessary, justified rage. We should be pissed off. We're dropping bombs on children every day. We're paying for it. It's coming out of our pocket. The blood is on our hands. And even though we don't make the decisions out here, we have voices, and we should be pushing back against it and stopping it. For Craig Pasta-Jardula, Matt Weinglass, Fiorella Isabel, and Jayme CheeseSlice on the ones and twos. That's it for it this week. Now, remember, Matt does the Homeless Left on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You can go check him out on all his platforms. Go to his YouTube, which is THL Presents, because we're hiding in the shadows over here. The TruthWire is formerly the Convo Couch. We rock it on Mondays and Fridays around 1 o'clock. And, of course, I have my show Drive Time that I do on Wednesdays. And, of course, you can always catch Matt Weinglass hanging out with his new good friend, Garland Nixon. We love you out there. Go on over and watch Miriam Hanen's show today, 3 o'clock on a Rumble channel. That's it for now. It was the TruthWire. It was Truth Time. Now it's time to go. We love you, and we'll see you next week.